close call, a moment of danger when life can hang in the balance.
It was about survival at that point.
A split second where the outcome could go either way.
I knew I had to get the people out of the car.
The difference between disaster and survival.
It was terrifying. I thought it was game over.
These are the people that have been there and lived to tell the tale.
When the doctor had a word with us and thought he was preparing us for David's death.
It's like something out of a horror film.
Their instincts and resources, coupled with the quick thinking of others, helped to pull them through.
I wanted to keep awake. I needed to keep awake.
And their dramatic experiences were recorded on camera.
Your life is on the line.
It's a day they'll never forget. The day they had a close call. Today on Close Calls, the yacht's camera records a crew enduring grueling conditions in the world's biggest ocean. They're all clipped on, but then another wave hits, and this is the moment the skipper realizes one of his crew has gone overboard.
I remember just turning around and pretty much seeing his feet as he sort of slipped over the guardrail and into the water.
A round-the-world trip of a lifetime becomes one man's battle for survival, lost in the stormy Pacific. In the middle of the North Pacific Ocean, this racing yacht is thousands of miles from land. Her crew are enthusiastic amateurs who've all signed up for the experience of a lifetime. But for one of the men, this is a journey into extreme danger.
We were hit by a rogue wave from the side of the boat, and it tipped the boat violently from one side to the other.
The crew have a man overboard. He swept away out of sight, lost in the rough, cold waters of the world's biggest ocean. If his crewmates can't find him quickly, he'll drown or simply freeze to death. It's September, and 12 ocean-going yachts set sail from Southend at the start of the Clipper Round the World race. On board each boat's a professional skipper and an excited crew of passionate but amateur sailors. From all walks of life, they share the same dream, to circumnavigate the globe and challenge themselves to the limit. Andrew Taylor is typical of those on board. He's sporty and an adventurer by nature. He's decided to take a year off after 4 years of extremely hard work as a project director on the London Olympics.
It was a great opportunity to take up a new challenge and learn a new skill. So the more training I did, the better I got, and the more confident I got at sailing and being in and around the boat.
Ahead of them is 40,000 miles of open ocean across 6 continents and many months of grueling hard work. And there are sacrifices to make. Andrew has had to wave goodbye to Mum, Dad, and the most precious farewell of all, to his 17-year-old daughter, Siobhan.
For me, that was one of the hardest things about the race, was being away from her for over a year.
For the first 25,000 miles at least, under the guidance of professional skipper Sean McCarter, the team's race goes smoothly.
At this stage, we've spent probably 6 months together. They've gone from, the crew to friends to, close friends.
In one fine spell of plain sailing, they even get a chance to make a jokey video to send back home. But that's all about to change. They're now more than halfway around the world. They're heading for San Francisco. And that means 4 weeks of crossing the unpredictable Northern Pacific Ocean.
Each of the oceans has got its own characteristic. North Pacific is violent. The weather systems change very quickly. You have to be very, very on your guard. It's not a great place to be. It's a nasty environment.
The weather deteriorates with squalls every 30 minutes. In conditions like this, the crew have to clip on safety lines, so if they fall overboard, they're tied to the boat and don't get swept out to sea.
Come through quite a big gale. We're getting 60 plus knots of wind. that sort of led us into the next day. The wind had dropped a little, enough that we could maybe get a smaller head sail up.
In these weather conditions, a smaller sail will make the boat safer and easier to control. But changing sails can be precarious. It involves standing at the narrow bow of the boat and bearing the full brunt of the waves.
There are a number of us on the boat that are comfortable doing it. So our skipper, Sean McCarter, and I, we headed up to the foredeck to start a head sail change.
The crew have been making a record of their journey on several cameras, and this one, fixed to the back of the boat, is running at the moment something terrible happens. Hidden by the mast, Andrew is right at the front with Sean and 2 other crew members behind them. While they battle to stay upright in the swell, Sean looks away for just a moment, and when he turns back, in that split second, Andrew has gone.
I remember just turning around and pretty much seeing his feet, the soles of his feet, as he sort of slipped over the guardrail and into the water.
The camera captures the crew's immediate reaction. There's no time for panic. Skipper Sean is straight into his drills. After alerting the crew below, he rushes to the helm at the back of the boat to turn it around. Another crew member, remembering their training, is pointing to Andrew in the water, keeping his arm outstretched and his eyes on.
And that's when it clicked that he wasn't clipped on, and we were in a lot more trouble than we thought originally.
Came up and resurfaced, and I felt a rush of water, and I thought that was me being dragged by the boat. And then I saw the boat flash past me, and I realised very quickly that I wasn't connected to the boat. And then I got hit by the rudder. The rudder struck me on the legs, it spun me round, it put me back underwater again, and as I surfaced, the pain at that moment was excruciating.
Mayday, mayday.
Down below, keeping calm, a crew member immediately puts out a mayday call.
We have a man overboard. We require immediate assistance.
But their yacht is well out of reach of air and sea rescue, and any other boats are likely to be hours away. So, back on deck, Sean and the rest of the crew fight to slow the boat and turn it.
The wind is so strong you can barely get the sails down.
It takes 7 minutes to lower the sails and start the engine to maneuver the boat.
Went into gear and tried to drive the boat through the wind and the waves to aim back towards them, and even doing that was almost impossible.
Andrew has a life jacket on, but all the time he's being pushed away in the powerful swell and current of the Pacific Ocean.
I saw the boat disappearing away into the distance, and I watched it. It was going pretty quickly.
To his shipmates, Andrew's now just an occasional dot on the restless horizon.
These huge 20, 30-foot waves the size of, 2-story houses, and you're going up and down, and we were just obviously a little bit out of sync with him, so maybe when we were up, he was down and we couldn't see across the next wave, and likewise when we went down, because the sea was really, really rough, we just couldn't make eye contact.
Then, Andrew's gone.
I saw the boat disappearing away into the distance, and then I saw somebody up the mast. And my initial reaction was, that's great, that I know, absolutely know now they're looking for me. That was really good. And then very quickly I realised that meant they didn't know where I was.
Every minute he's out in the rough, freezing, cold ocean, Andrew's chances of survival deteriorate. The crew knows he will slip into hypothermia if he doesn't drown first.
Looking for Andrew, who I was just laughing with 2 minutes ago and I've spent the last 6 months with. You're essentially searching for a good friend.
Later, the yacht's crew desperately search for Andrew adrift in the Pacific storm. They know he hasn't long to live, and so does he.
I got rolled over and over and over in the water. I thought I was going to lose my life jacket at one point. I came up briefly for air and I went to take a breath and got hit by another wave. I ended up taking water instead. I sort of forgot about the boat. It was about survival at that point.
In the middle of the North Pacific Ocean, a yacht competing in the Clipper Round the World race is desperately trying to save the life of one of its crew. 46-year-old Andrew has been swept overboard. He's out of sight, lost and alone in rough seas and bad weather.
I tried to find the boat again. I couldn't see the boat. I turned myself around 360 in the water a few times and I couldn't see the boat. I knew I was in a bad place. I knew that we were mid-North Pacific, well over 1,000 miles from land. And I knew my only hope was our own boat at that time.
Andrew's wearing an automatic identification system that should send his location back to his boat by satellite.
When I turned my beacon on, I wondered if anyone would see that. I knew that people knew I had that with me, and I could only hope that they were looking for it, but I didn't know for sure.
But there's a problem. Andrew's beacon is failing to give off a signal, so his position is unknown to his crewmates. They will have to use more old-fashioned seamanship in an attempt to locate him.
We knew basically the wind and the current were pushing him in one direction, and we knew where he'd went in. So we were sort of zigzagging over and back the course that we predicted he was drifting down.
Meanwhile, Andrew's in total isolation. He's been in the cold ocean for over half an hour now. The dry suit he's wearing has kept the water out and the cold at bay for a while.
I could feel the cold getting in. It started to get painful being cold. The shivering was painful. So all the kind of real extremities were starting to shut down quickly.
Andrew is showing the first signs of hypothermia. Suddenly, things get even worse. The weather changes. A Pacific storm comes in, bringing winds of up to 50 knots. Sean knows that if they don't get to Andrew soon, his chances of survival are diminishing by the minute.
The boats have got big engines for their size, 135 horsepower, massive engine, and it was just barely enough to get the boat over the waves. We're, maybe 20 or 30 feet high at this point.
Bad conditions on a boat, deadly if you're in the water.
I came up briefly for air and I went to take a breath and got hit by another wave. I ended up taking water instead. The storm seemed to go on forever. I'd sort of forgotten about the boat. It was about survival at that point.
Andrew's exhausted, chilled to the bone, and at the point of falling unconscious. His mind wanders over 7,000 miles to Britain, to home, and to thoughts of his beloved daughter and parents.
I remembered it was my mum's birthday, and the initial thought was all for her. And then I thought, no, do you know what? I'm not going to die today on my mum's birthday. That's not going to happen. And I pulled my spray hood off and I started looking for the boat again, and it gave me real strength.
Andrew rallies. After an hour in the water, he wonders why the boat hasn't located him and checks his beacon, turning it off and on again. He doesn't realise this one small action may have just saved his life, because the beacon suddenly starts transmitting a signal back to his crewmates.
We got his position on the AIS beacon, and it was a hallelujah moment, and we started going there as quick as we can.
But it's still going to take them over 20 minutes under engine to reach him. Andrew's been in so long, the crew's unspoken fear is that this is no longer a rescue.
You go from thinking, thank God we found him, to we could be pulling a body out of the water, worst case scenario.
Finally, the moment they've all been anxiously hoping for, and the crew capture it on their own camera. 80 minutes after he went in, they found Andrew. He's very weak, almost unconscious, but alive.
I heard my name. I was absolutely sure it was my name. Wow, somebody just said my name. And I looked around and I turned around. The boat was right here. It was literally almost on top of me. And I looked up, and my first thought was, geez, it's enormous. Seeing them from that angle, that close, in that kind of sea state was quite daunting.
Andrew's found, but not safe yet. The crew know they need to get him on board as soon as possible. Every second he remains in the water, his body's shutting down, and he could still die in front of them. Though getting him out won't be easy. This camera records the crew's struggle as rescue swimmer Jason is lowered into the water on a rope. He has to attach himself to Andrew and get them both winched back up. But it's hazardous. Skipper Sean has to keep the boat as steady as possible in the rough sea to avoid the pair being dashed against the hull and seriously hurt. With the of their mates now hanging in the balance. The crew members controlling the rope carefully try to maneuver Jason close to Andrew, but the first attempt fails.
In the North Pacific, in 5 or 10 degrees air temperature, wet, their hands are numb, so the first time we couldn't get them clipped on.
They try again, but again they don't succeed, and Andrew agonisingly slips away once more.
Second time, I think the wind might have blown us off or the wrong direction.
Andrew knows he's in a bad way, and every minute he's in the water counts.
The boat came round for the third time, and during the time it went away and came back again, I talked to myself a lot. I wasn't sure if I had enough strength to do it. And I kind of pumped myself up and said, right, you need to do this now, you need to sort yourself out now, you need to find the strength now, this is it.
When he comes near to Jason once more, Andrew makes a monumental effort to reach his outstretched arm.
So we were almost right next to each other, and we made contact quite quickly, and we grasped hands, and he looked me in the eye and said, it's good to see you, mate.
But they need a stronger connection than a handshake.
I'd still got my safety line attached to me, and I played it out, and I got hold of the end of it, and as the boat came alongside me, I handed it to Jason, and he took it in his hand.
Jason has to attach the clip at the end of Andrew's safety line to the boat's rope, or Andrew will be swept away again.
Jason was cold too. He couldn't work the clip with his hands, and he was struggling to get it clipped on.
Then, finally, success.
And then it snapped shut onto the halyard, and I knew that I was now connected to the boat. I clearly remember the sound as it snapped shut.
The conditions are worsening, so with huge effort, Jason and the other crew members lean down to grab Andrew, and with tired arms, they drag him onto the boat. At last. Andrew may be out of the ocean, but still not out of danger. Spending over an hour and a half in the cold, rough waters has clearly taken its toll on him. Susie, the crew medic on board, takes control.
We got him downstairs, got the team to cut his clothes off, asked him some questions that would kind of assess how coherent he was, and realised quite quickly that actually he was very with it.
My leg all over. I was stuck in it. I didn't know if you were looking for me or not. I didn't know if you'd seen me.
Pale, shivering, tired and emotional, Andrew has hypothermia. They still have to get his body temperature back up slowly.
That was the most painful 4 hours of the whole experience. I cried for most of it. The pain was excruciating, just the most unbelievable pain I've ever experienced.
Susie will not leave Andrew for the next 48 hours. He swallowed a lot of seawater, and there's still a danger of secondary drowning when inhaled water absorbs into the lungs, damaging the membranes, causing breathing difficulties and possible cardiac arrest.
I wanted someone to be with him the whole time, so that if he drifted off and then he woke up, there was someone there straight away, just to hold his hand and talk to him and not have him worry.
I don't think it could have been much closer. I mean, if his AIS beacon hadn't went off, I'm sure we would have found him, but if it had taken another 15, 20 minutes, half an hour, it mightn't have been a live body we were pulling out.
Nearly 2 weeks later, Andrew is safely delivered by his crew to San Francisco. And after medical checks, he's past fit. But will he continue?
For me, it's called Around the World for a reason. My intention was to sail around the world, to race around the world, to complete the whole race. And so I decided I was going to get back on.
"40,000 miles later, Andrew and his shipmates have done it. Finished the longest sailing race in the world.
I hadn't expected to potentially come that close to not coming back. That, coupled with being away for over a year, made arriving back in London and seeing my daughter Siobhan for the first time just the most magical moment. It was so very, very special. I thought a lot about my daughter when I was in the water. I managed to get a phone signal and talk to her before we got in. I was interviewed on the boat as soon as the boat hit the dock, and it was on the big screen in the marina. She happened to be standing right next to the big screen with my father as I was interviewed. I didn't know that's where they were, and at the end of the interview I said how much I was looking forward to seeing her, and I told her how much I loved it down the camera, and she watched it with her grandfathers. and they both had a pretty big emotional moment, and so did I. It was really pretty special, actually.
Well, that's all for today. Join us again next time for more stories from people about the day they had a close call.